I used to be unable to smile in photos because it would just look so like weird. I'd be like Chandler. Well, that's a dated. You're too young for Friends, both of you. But it's like it would be like Chandler on Friends. I'd be like,
I've seen the whole series, so I don't know.
oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Do you watch Friends, Rachel?
I have seen it, yes.
And speaking of even older sitcoms, I'm like almost done Seinfeld. So
yeah. Rachel's not engaging in the pre-show banter. She looks very aloof right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've had a very, very stressful couple days.
All right. Well, I guess let's get things started then. Hello and welcome to you all. Happy Friday. We are heading into the long weekend, so it's not just a regular old Friday. It is a Friday that hopefully precedes a few days of deserved and, in this climate, needed R&R. It is my pleasure to be with you again once on off the... Wait, no. My pleasure to be with you once again. I was like speaking like Yoda there. Pleasure with you it is. But it is off the record. I am Andrew Lawton, and joining me are Isaac Lamoureux and Rachel Emmanuel. Good to have you both on. You were on last week, but I wasn't. So this is the first time for this particular trio. Welcome.
Not only are we both, I'm sure, happy to be back, but I think we're also pretty relieved that you're back to hosting again, Andrew.
I was away last week. I didn't watch it. Was it like a train wreck?
You don't need to go back and watch it. I don't think you're missing anything.
I'm surprised that I was invited back.
You've successfully promoted it probably better than our social media desk did. But I am here. You guys are both our token Albertans. How have things been in my one of my favorite? Well, I don't want to pick favorites now because then the Ontarians are going to take aim at me. But a province that I love. How are things over there?
Things here are hectic as always. If I could be so bold as to tease my show on Saturday, there's been some interesting developments with the COVID-19 vaccine. The United Conservative Party board has actually decided to take a stand against the COVID-19 vaccine, and they're urging the premier to amend the policy so that it's not being recommended for kids anymore, which I think is a pretty big stance that they're taking, and it's a pretty interesting development. So I'll be covering that on Saturday. If any of you viewers want to head over to my show Saturday afternoon to take a look at that.
All right, an unscheduled PSA for the Alberta Roundup. Isaac, how are things in your corner of the world, province?
Yeah,
city?
I don't know how it's going in Calgary there, Rachel, but it's been pouring rain all day here in Edmonton, which is good, especially with the fires going on in Fort McMurray, though it's obviously further from Edmonton. But yeah, the rain is a welcome sign for the Alberta wildfires that have been plaguing the province, and despite all of them except one being man-made.
I'm glad you mentioned the fires. I should have pulled the clip, but Justin Trudeau earlier was saying like Canada is burning and Pierre Poilievre is happy with Canada burning because he supports the carbon tax being repealed. And I'm like, wow, you're just like taking it right up to like drama teacher grade 11 there. In any event, the climate change debate in Canada brings us all sorts of fun things. The most cringeworthy of them all, no, it's not the carbon tax. It's not the plastic straw ban. It's not even the fact that the government spent $3 million sending a delegation to Dubai for the COP28 climate summit. It was specifically what happened at the Canada Pavilion at the climate summit for the UN, COP28 in Dubai. This was $1.3 million that was spent on hosting a Canada Pavilion to showcase Canada. And you think, okay, what are we going to do to show Canada off to the world? Are we going to serve them poutine? Are we going to put up a hockey game? Are we going to show a reel of all the great comedians from Canada, show them some John Candy and some Dan Aykroyd? Or are we going to showcase the best of Canadian music? They chose that option.
All right, I don't even know what it says. Climate disinformation, get that immunization, the vaccine for bad meme infiltration. Climate misinformation, it leads to polarization, which leads to radical conspiracy ideation. Simultaneous translation between conspiracy theories and violent means of change embracement. Economic incentives or ideological basis, it doesn't matter, because either way it's still disinformation. Climate change is upon us, and emissions are like a bomb as the wave of increasing heat carries on and on. The wave of disinformation keeps on getting shared online, tracked by the lab of Marie-Eve Carignan from Université Sherbrooke. According to her book, the anti-government left and right right now share a yearbook. And when it comes to floods, droughts, and wildfires, even today's environmentalists can be climate deniers. Those are the yoga QAnon people up in the mix. Marie Eve tracks the patterns with the acronym FLICK. False X words, fallacious logic, unrealistic expectations, cherry picking and conspiracy theory ideation. That's FLICK. Advertisers can help us find the fix. The climate host is exposed, brought to you by Wix. From the false promotion of bad pollutions and tricks to the outright denialism saying it doesn't exist. There's a reason for the IPCC. It doesn't make assumptions. Make your advertising conscious. Take it from Jake Dubbins. Yes, we need free speech to get the facts in the fight. But like Jake said, ad revenue is not a human right.
You know the exchange rate is bad. That was 50 Canadian cent right there. 50 Canadian cent is worth a lot less than regular old 50 cent. Boy, that was, I don't want to say it cost us $1.3 million, but it certainly cost a fair bit. We flew Baba Brinkman, the Canadian rapper, and coincidentally, son of a Liberal member of Parliament. So this is if you're a Liberal MP and you need to get your son employed, you can say just like make a rap so bad that Eminem will just want to just cross the border and replace him perhaps. I don't know which of you is the rap aficionado. I'm no one has ever looked at me and said that I'm hip, but just what the hell was that?
I think Isaac's probably the one to go to here. I'm a little too old for rap music. Isaac, take it away.
Yeah, honestly, just at the start of his set, let's call it, he said, "I don't even know the words," but then he seemed pretty well versed in the kind of the flow of the song. So I was like, does this guy really not know the words? Because I feel like if I were just reading the screen and listening to the beat for the first time and tried to rap that song, I probably wouldn't have done nearly as good of a job as him. From the actual flow perspective. But yeah, Canada does have some pretty big name rappers, notably Drake, The Weeknd. I guess he's kind of a rapper.
Yeah, that was the weekday we just saw. That was the weekday.
And yeah, he didn't get to the Stephen Guilbeault part, but he gives Stephen Guilbeault a special shout out. So that's nice. Yeah, it was funny. I think I saw yesterday on X, Guilbeault was tweeting about the Fort Mac fires and of course climate change. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure all those fires were man-made, but I don't see why we're attributing that to climate change. That kind of applies to what he was rapping about just now in the song, climate misinformation. Is that not the same thing?
Stephen Guilbeault is funnier than Johnny Carson. He doesn't tell us that the fires were actually arson. I don't know. I'm keeping my day job. Rachel, what's your arts correspondent take on this?
I don't really even want to make fun of him because you can really tell he gave that his all. Like
it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. Like
for a white guy, it wasn't half bad, and you could tell he was 100% into it. He obviously spent a lot of time memorizing those words, and
he found a rhyme for University of Sherbrooke. Like that's never been done in the history of music.
He really gave it his all, and while I don't really want to make fun of him because it just feels a bit mean because it's just how hard he tried, I'm going to because ultimately it was my tax dollars that paid for it, and it was a waste of money, and it was still fairly stupid. But we were just talking about Justin Trudeau and how he was, he's always so theatrical with the things he says about Pierre Poilievre. And I think when we're looking at the Liberal Party as a whole, they're just really, they seem stuck in high school. This is something that I would have done in high school. Like I remember my friends and I would come up with raps and we would do them in class. And, we thought we were really cool and clever and the rest of the class enjoyed it. But we're well beyond that now. The Liberals really seem, stuck in their youth, unable to grow up. So that's pretty much what we're seeing here.
I looked him up on Wikipedia because I'm like, if we're going to do this, let's go all in. And he's made like a name for himself doing science rap and environment and ecology rap, which to be honest, he's like the greatest capitalist known to mankind because he knows that all of these like UN climate summits around the world want to be hip and cool. And they're like, well, we have a guy who will rap about the climate. He'll rap about the IPCC. Why wouldn't we want to do that? That's great. Like, so he's done something so ridiculous that he's guaranteed he's the only person in the world that can do it, to which I say, very, very much rewarding him for the entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, sometimes I regret that I'm someone who has such strong morals and would just despise taking government money for frivolous reasons. Because think about how wealthy we could all be otherwise. Doesn't take much.
Yeah. So that video. So I only learned about this just to give the context. That happened in November, December, and I only learned about it because there was an order paper question that I think Dan Mazur, the Liberal or the Conservative MP, had filed to get the costs for the Dubai delegation, the Canadian delegation to Dubai. And the Canadian Taxpayers Federation poured through this as well. And they found that we had at the Canada Pavilion this wrap. And the guy uploaded it himself. Like he was very proud of this. And then I looked into it. He's founded a company called Event Wrap, a custom rap agency featuring a roster of independent hip hop artists who write and perform original works for live events. So that we should get like at True North Nation, we should get some like independent media rap. I don't know what rhymes with defund the CBC. Give me Isaac, say something and I'll try and think of this.
You want me to find a rhyme for defund the CBC?
Well, you can. I was just saying, or talk while I try to come up with
CBC,
one.
She's hot like double D's.
Oh my God.
What?
That's not the road I would have gone.
Yeah, that's Rachel's getting our clean tag taken away more and more.
I can say it. I can say it.
Defund the CBC. It's paid for by you and me.
Ooh, that's
that's good. I mean, I was hearing a bit of like Jackson 5 though, like ABC, defund the CBC.
Defund
what rhymes with
CBC.
Rosie Barton?
They don't deserve no money free.
Okay, wait. Okay, we got to find rhymes for Mansbridge, rhymes for Rosie Barton. When we defund the CBC, we'll be carting away their property, including Rosie. But no, that sounded weird. This is why we need to leave it to the pros, like Mr. Baba Brinkman. Okay, $1.3 million for the Canada Pavilion. Do you feel that Canada has been sufficiently sold on the world stage now?
Sorry, I'm looking up words on Rhyme Dictionary. Isaac, take it away.
I like by the way, I love that we're doing the preparation for the show midway through the show. None of us knew we were going to go down this road enough to think ahead of time of like maybe plan something out.
Next week we'll have to come prepared with like a full True North rap.
Yeah, I started preparing about 3 minutes before the show because I had to try on a bunch of different shirts.
All right, so if you're in the comments and you want to come up with your defund the CBC rhymes, I think actually Isaac was the best at this so far because he actually came up with something. I'm still like trying to like find a rhyme for Peter Mansbridge.
There's not a lot of results on here for Barton.
Well, Barton, like carton, like milk.
I got it. Let's get rid of Rosemary Barton. Around the truth, she's always darting.
Oh, okay.
That's
I like Rosie Barton. I don't think we need to crap on her, but I admire the rhyme at least. So
thank you.
Well done, Rachel. You're holding your own. You're going to be repping the West Side rap thing before long. We should just everyone has left. No one is watching the show anymore except for someone who walked away to the kitchen and left their YouTube or Spotify running. But
way to sell us, Andrew.
I believe we can move on mercifully to the next topic here. The other things that we are spending millions and millions of dollars on. Rachel, why don't you take us away on this?
So taxpayers are on the hook for $224 per day to claimants for illegal immigrants for their housing, food, and essential items. This was revealed from Conservative MP Leanne Rood, who asked the government last week what goods and services are being provided to asylum seekers in Canada, which means those without approved applications. And she published the order paper response question, which found that the federal government has approved $140 per night per room and roughly $84 per day for food, totaling $224 per claimant. And I'm looking for the full amount here. So that's an all-time high there's over 42,000 pending refugee claims in Canada right now. So if you're wondering, you can't make ends meet, I hear from a lot of people who are about $100 short a month for making groceries. Where's all our money going? This is where it's going. It's going to illegals who have no right to be in Canada. We're putting them up at hotels and we're paying for their food. Andrew, what do you make of this?
Yeah, you touch on the dollar value issue, but the one thing, and I pointed this out on my show earlier this week, that's important to keep in mind as well, is that it's a symptom of another problem because the cost per day on asylum seekers is a consequence of the number of asylum seekers we have. So many that they have to be put up in hotels and fed. And the reason we have so many is because the government's not actually securing the border. So we are forced into this because they're not dealing with the other problem, which is people who are in the United States, which is a safe, free, democratic nation, whatever you may think of Joe Biden's politics, that say, okay, I think I'll have a better go in Canada. So they enter Canada illegally, claim asylum. Most of these claims are going to get denied and the people are going to be sent home. But while they are waiting for that decision, which could be months, it could be well over a year, we're paying for them and loading up these hotels. And this has been an issue that's been ongoing it's been ongoing for years, but for a decade, it's been at I'd say, unsustainable levels. And I know you in Alberta are not dealing with this as much as in Ontario, but you look at places like Niagara Falls, and I know like you have family in that area, Rachel, like it's absolutely crazy. And you have hotels that have just been commandeered by this asylum program. What do you make of this, Isaac?
Yeah, that does seem crazy to me, specifically the fact that, let's say, the majority of these asylum seekers will be essentially deported. So, what reasoning would Canada have to essentially pay for their cost of living in the interim? But at the same time, I'm trying to find, I guess, the alternative, which would be maybe they wouldn't get paid for and then they're homeless. I remember I was writing an article earlier about homelessness on hospital stays, but as background, I saw True North's exclusive that said that nearly half of Ottawa's homeless shelters were filled with new refugees and asylum claimants. So that would obviously be exacerbated if the funding were pulled. So I don't know. What do you think the best alternative would be, as opposed to paying for these asylum claimants to stay in hotels?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what Andrew was saying about how the issue is that these are largely people who are coming in across the US border. So, I mean, if this is foot traffic that we're looking at, I think the best thing would be to reinforce those borders so they're not coming across the border at all. Because even if they are being deported, we're also paying for those flights to get them back to their home countries. So I think we could look at saving a lot of money if we're just stopping these people right at the US border. We're not letting them into Canada. You know, the US obviously has its own border crisis. And I think there's a certain extent at which we're going to be feeling the effects of that because they just have millions of illegal migrants pouring through their southern border. And so people are being pushed upwards throughout the country. So this is actually going to become probably a bigger and bigger problem if we don't take some action and seal that border sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think that, again, when we're stuck with it once they're here, so you have to go back to basics and actually secure the border in the first place. Like the whole point of what caused a lot of this was this thing called the Safe Third Country. I know I always say we have to keep off the record fun, but then I have to explain things sometimes. It's the Safe Third Country Agreement, which basically said it was a deal between Canada and the US that if you land in one country, it's considered a safe country, so you can't then go to another one. The loophole in that was if you cross the border illegally. So that was what was causing this. You couldn't actually drive from Windsor to Detroit or Detroit to Windsor at the sanctioned border crossing and do this. But if you do it illegally, you were able to, and then Canada has to do it. Because you're right, Isaac, once you talk about the options that people have, that Canada has, you either put them in jail, which is a legitimate option available to government, but it's more expensive. Housing inmates in jail is costlier. And let's face it, it's also, you raise moral questions depending on the asylum seeker. And so you're left with that or leaving them homeless or this kind of quasi measure of putting them up in a hotel. But then the other issue we get to is if their claims are denied, are we actually tracking them down and deporting them? And Canada has an abysmal record at deportation. So like all of these are flowing from that initial border issue.
Yeah, I still maintain that
when no one says anything, I assume I just made so much sense that no one possibly can add or refute anything.
That's where I was at, yeah.
You really did hit the nail on the head. I just maintain, I think the best thing would be to really seal up those borders. This isn't an issue I've covered a ton of. I think we've seen a lot of good stuff from Lindsay Shepherd on this. Mm-hmm. As you've mentioned, Andrew, like I'm out here in Alberta. It's true. This issue is particularly bad. I know in Quebec, I know in Niagara Falls, certainly we've seen some of the effects of just the high levels of migrants living in that area and how that trickles down to the whole Niagara region. And we even see a rise in things like crime and car accidents. There's just a whole lot of issues going on. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is also affecting Western Canada as well, because what we're seeing in places like Toronto is we're seeing just a flood of immigrants, and not all of them illegal. Many are legal. Many of them are allowed into the country, but it's just so many people in one region that we're seeing a lot of people look, okay, where else in Canada can I flee to? And many people are coming out to Calgary, and, Alberta was once seen as a place with the Alberta advantage. You'd come here, you get to keep more of your money. You'd have a lower cost of living. You'd have a better chance at owning a home. And a lot of that just isn't really the case anymore for Western Canada. I know that there's been some frustration with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and her Alberta is Calling campaign as a result, because people would really like to slow down and say, let's stop welcoming people here for the time being, and really just kind of let things even out before we continue to say, hey, why don't you come to Alberta? We're looking to grow our population. We're looking to grow our economy. So when we see this many people flood into a region, it really does put so many pressures on every aspect of life: housing, schools, hospitals, everything.
Yeah, this from the legal migration aspect of it. I mean, Alberta's been setting records on pretty much a monthly basis for interprovincial migration, which I guess can be expected as the cost of living crisis rises, with Alberta being one of the most not only affordable provinces, but where you can also make the most amount of money, right? When you balance those two things, it's definitely a good place to be economically, which I think is why so many people from eastern provinces are looking to migrate here.
Yep, very well said. On that note, Isaac, since you're already talking, why don't you kick off our next story here?
Yeah, so this next one's pretty fun. Fun. Yeah, Andrew was saying to come up with a fun story, and I thought, well,
I said light story, but anyway.
I was thinking anger might be an antonym of fun. Well, not exactly, but anyways. So basically anger in Canada towards government, economy, and policies has reached a record high. This from the Polara's Rage Index, which they have been tracking for about 2 years. And interestingly, this monthly edition of the index had a specific focus on the budget, with some data that was quite surprising to me. For example, I had seen previous polls which showed that 21% of Canadians, I know a low number, supported the federal budget, but this Rage Index showed an even lower one, wherein only 9% of Canadians had a positive outlook on the budget. This was separated by pleased or moderately happy and very happy, with the latter only 1% of Canadians belonging to. And it also broke down political parties, which was cool. As you might expect, conservative supporters were the angriest and liberals the least angry. But what might be more interesting is that the Bloc Québécois and the NDP pretty much mirrored each other in percentage of anger on this index. I think it was 54 and 53%, if I remember correctly. But you might have expected more anger from the Bloc Québécois supporters and less so from the NDP.
I guess I'm curious, when Andrew said lighter story, what about you were like, I'm going to talk about the Rage Index?
Well,
Andrew, your audio is not working.
And yeah, no, I thought it was muted. I said it's okay, but a Rage Index is just a funny name. I guess that's why. So I was just being like childishly immature about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I find this study like a little bit depressing. I mean, I think Isaac and I are both in this category, although Isaac just got a house recently, which is pretty big. Congratulations. But being in that category of younger Canadians who are really feeling the impacts of the Trudeau Liberals and their really poor policies and the impact of that on Canadians, and those of us who are struggling to, have a newer vehicle or own a home. So I get really worked up when I read stories like this, because I'm like, yeah, like I'm there and I'm angry and I'm really pissed off about what the Trudeau Liberals are doing to our country. So someone who finds the story a bit lighter, maybe has to take it away here, Andrew.
I don't find it lighter per se. I guess it's interesting that it's just so explicit, because a lot of people, especially Canadians, really try to mute their emotions, and they try to say, well, I'm a little frustrated. And how many people, I've spoken to so many over the years who really tried it, like they feel guilty about being dissatisfied, where they'll say things like, well, I know, I mean, I don't have it as bad as other people do. And they really do not want to just come out and say it. And the fact that now you have people that are explicitly saying, yeah, I'm pissed off. Yeah, I'm angry. I think that's actually a sign of just how bad things have gotten.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially when you consider what you said about Canadians typically being not quick to complain and being a little bit more apathetic when it comes to politics. But yeah, now that people are really feeling that frustration and willing to voice it. And I think, it's not even necessarily saying like, oh, I know other people don't have it as bad, but let's compare to where our country was at 10 years ago. oh, our country's declined rapidly in the last 10 years. Oh, the cost of living has increased exponentially. Oh, the Canadian dollar is worth less. Oh, Canadian mental health is poor. We can study all these metrics and see that they've actually gotten worse over the last 10 years. So I think we should really be comparing things to, just even what it was a decade ago. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I would like to get back to the Canada that we had. That Canada felt more optimistic. That Canada felt more hopeful and more promising for me and for my family. And so I think if you look at it from that way, it's actually a very fair metric. And even for myself, like growing up, I didn't necessarily think that we had the most amazing house. And now looking at it, it's sort of like a dream to think, well, we had a house with 4 to 5 bedrooms and 2 washrooms, and everyone had their own room, and we had a little bit of a backyard, and we even had a driveway and a shed out back. Those things are really hard for people to get now. And there's nothing wrong with saying I would at least like to be able to offer my kids the same upbringing and the same quality of life that I had growing up. And I think we shouldn't accept that we are declining in those metrics as a country when there's no reason that we shouldn't be improving of them, that we really should be able to offer our families a better quality of life.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And the idea of like the starter home, I think it's coming back, but there was a time where I think a lot of people, I mean, certainly millennials, were looking at houses and everyone wanted the giant dream home that no one would really reasonably expect to be able to buy just out of school or whatever. I think it's changing a little bit. I think now you see a lot of younger people that are willing to say, I'll be in a less desirable neighborhood or I'll have a really small house. But even then, they're finding it like just completely unaffordable. Like you look at some of the property listings in places like Toronto and Vancouver, and it's like $1 million for a place that you might get shot just going from your bathroom to your bedroom.
I mean, it's not even that much better in Calgary, though. Like I had Councillor Dan McLean on my show the other week. We were talking about the rezoning going on in Calgary, which has passed now, by the way. And I was saying, a lot of these modest bungalows are going to be torn down and replaced with duplexes that'll be worth quite a bit. And he was like, in some cases, these duplexes are going to be worth $1 million. So you're paying $1 million for a duplex. You've got neighbors on both sides of you. You might have a unit below you. You might even have the unit in the back of you. So you've got absolutely no privacy, no space to yourself. I guess we can all agree the World Economic Forum has been more successful than we care to admit.
Although Isaac got a house, so maybe he's like sitting on some giant like Scrooge McDuck sized pile of cash that we don't know about.
Yeah. Changing topics.
He blushes and tugs at his collar. All right, never mind.
No. There was 2 more things I wanted to mention from the study quickly, which firstly, this obviously focused on the rage index towards the federal government, but they also polled people from provinces and asked them about their feelings towards the provincial government, which was pretty interesting because anger towards the provincial government was highest in Ontario at 60%, but anger in British Columbia towards the provincial government grew at the highest rate, which was a 16% jump from 38 in January to 54% in April. And then one other point I did want to mention, because this was interesting too. You might think that the oldest generation would be the angriest. However, in this study, Gen X, which they listed as 44 to 59 years old, was the angriest generation. So yeah, if you two want to weigh in on that, anything that I just said, that
the provincial thing I find interesting because during COVID, I think we saw government was like an amorphous mass. Like people were mad at government, and I don't think they really cared which level it was. So in that sense, I do find it interesting that Ontario has borne the brunt of it. The Gen X one, I'm surprised by because I think Gen Xers are better off than millennials who are better off than Gen Z in a lot of ways. Although I'm not, I don't know. That's a confusing one.
The Gen X would be the generation just below the baby boomers. And
yeah, Gen X is the friends generations. I mean, Gen Xers are now like 50 years old. So it's the age of the cast of Friends, basically.
I'm actually not super surprised by this because the baby boomers have always been regarded as the generation that got all the blessings. They have all the wealth. I know a lot of people are saying with the Trudeau Liberals' new changes to taxes, they're really targeting the baby boomers and their wealth there. And my mom is a Gen X and she always complains. She's like, if I had just been born a little bit earlier, I would have had a little bit more money. The baby boomers have it so much easier. So I feel like the Gen X generation is maybe that generation that always feels like they just kind of missed out. If they've been born a few years earlier, maybe they would have had the wealth of the baby boomers. So I don't know. I'm not super surprised to see this number. They're also still in the generation that they're not retired. They're working towards retirement. And with the changes that we're seeing with the cost of living crisis, they're probably looking at this and thinking, I'd hope to retire in 5 to 10 to 15 years. And that's not going to happen right now. I'm going to actually have to work way past the age I plan to retire at because I'm not putting away as much money into my retirement as I'd hoped to. I'm not making as much, all those things. So I'm not actually super surprised by those numbers.
Yeah, my
I think
theory
you
just
dated yourself by saying that your mother is in Gen X, because you even made me feel old because my parents are boomers.
I dated myself.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like you've dated yourself. You've
well,
established it. Not like you've gone out on a romantic date with yourself. I mean, you've like,
yes, I get it. Well, here, I'm the oldest generation of Gen Z. I'm the oldest generation of Zoomers, so
okay.
not that old, but
Anyway, what were you saying, Isaac?
Yeah, sorry. Just my theory when I initially saw the Gen X thing was that, and especially because I've spoken with many people in this generation, and the recurring issue I see with them is that they're worried about their children, and I think people in this generation probably have children that are teens and maybe even becoming adults. Like Rachel said, your mom's in that, and
yeah, I'm
so is
becoming an
mine.
adult.
So I'm slowly becoming an adult, and then yeah, so I think they're worried about the generational economic damage that their children are going to have to deal with, right? So that's my best theory. They don't really go into it in the study, but
Yeah. The word of the day the term of the day from Trudeau for the last 2 weeks has been generational fairness. That's what he thinks he is delivering. So take from that what you will. We're jumping a little ahead of the schedule here, but this one is interesting. Rachel, you flagged this ridiculous Shoppers story, which I think actually speaks to the rage and opportunity. Explain what happened here.
So, Shoppers, a location in Toronto, Ontario, posted a job advertising for a part time employee. The only thing is that it actually isn't a job, it's a position for an unpaid volunteer. The listing here says this is a part time on site volunteer role at Shoppers Drug Mart in Toronto, Ontario. As a volunteer, you will be responsible for assisting with various tasks and providing support to the staff. This may include helping customers find products, restocking shelves, organizing inventory, and maintaining a clean and organized store environment. Your role as a volunteer is crucial in ensuring that our customers have a positive and seamless shopping experience. So, obviously, you can see very clearly from the description there that this is indeed a job, something that someone should be paid at least minimum wage for. But I think what's happening here is we've all seen those videos. Well, maybe not all of us, but I'll describe it for our viewers who haven't seen it. If you spend a lot of time on X, as all of us on here do, you've often seen videos of people in Toronto lining up at job fairs for jobs at something like maybe say Canadian Tire or Tim Hortons or McDonald's, and there's just lines of people down the street. You look like these lines look hours long, and sometimes there's just people hoarding the doors and they're trying to hand their application in. You've even seen videos where people are like, "Sorry, we're no longer accepting applications." Just hundreds and hundreds of people showing up at jobs fairs for very basic minimum wage part-time jobs. And so what we're really seeing here is there's just not enough demand. And I can't help but think that maybe shoppers thought, there's so much demand. Obviously, this has lowered the value of wages. Maybe we can get someone who would be desperate enough to just get some experience, to put something on their resume that could later on lead to a part-time job, since we've got so many people who are clearly out of work. That's my suspicion. And, of course, this is again falls back to immigration, the high levels of immigration that we're seeing, particularly concentrated in the GTA region. That's really what's causing this impact. And I know that's my suspicion as to why shoppers posted this position. I will say that they have been ruthlessly mocked online for it, and they have since pulled the job posting from LinkedIn. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, just on that, they pulled it. Corporate weighed in and said it was a mistake, and then they also said, well, it was the local franchisor, because with Shoppers, the pharmacist owns the store. So I don't think it was a mistake. I think the pharmacist was being an absolutely just predatory human being in trying to get people to work for him for free. And I'm hoping that the whip is coming down behind the scenes on that. But no, it's ridiculous. And look, I mean, internships have in and of themselves gotten a bad rap as of late, but at least an internship is an environment in which you're supposed to learn. It's typically part of studying. But even then, unpaid internships are very controversial. This doesn't even pretend to be that. This is just, hey, come and work for us for free.
Yeah, I don't.
No.
And I wouldn't necessarily say there's anything wrong with an unpaid internship if you're learning like a specific skill and maybe an industry you want to go to. But come on, restocking shelves, like just give the person $11, $13 an hour, whatever it is, call it a day. Isaac, what do you think?
yeah, I've never personally been supportive of unpaid internships, but to play devil's advocate for shoppers here, they didn't hide like it. The header of the job did say volunteer, so it wasn't like they were saying, "Oh, you can be a whatever their employee title would be called, a stock associate, let's say," and then at the end they're like, "Oh, but we won't pay you." So at least they were just saying that, yeah, this is a volunteer role. Like, they weren't trying to hide that at least. And I don't know how abnormal it is to post volunteer jobs to LinkedIn, but obviously this is a job that you would normally expect to get paid for. I mean, it's an interesting business model. Join a market that's so desperate for work that you can just post jobs that people apply to, because I think I've always believed that work in general just gives humans a desire to live, right? Like, it's a really an important part of life, in my opinion. So yeah, just a good business design there, which is post your jobs as volunteer work, because people are so dying to work that they'll just come work for you for free. Yeah.
I think you actually made a
look,
pretty
and
astute
then there's the
point.
capitalist in me that's like, well, okay, if people are willing to do it, then it's no skin off anyone else's back. But it's still, I think, is really. I hope this hasn't been going on for long. In fact, I hope this was the first time this has ever been done, and we all just see how terrible it is, and it never happens again. Much like I hope the government never puts $1.7 million of your and my tax money into funding the manufacture of pasta in Brampton. This is a thing that happened this week. The federal government announced $1.7 million to Ital Pasta, which is a company that's going to create a massive economic benefit with this. They're going to take the $1.7 million. They're going to, turn it into dough. They're going to knead it. They're going to run it through the machine. And at the end of it, 10 jobs are created. 10 jobs. That is a cost per job of $170,000. It would be more advantageous, I think, just to walk around in Brampton and give people $10,000 each until the $1.7 million runs out. You'd probably have more economic benefit there. Isaac, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you about the economic benefit part. You give those people the $10,000, they'll spend it, which I guess is the premise of GDP. But I mean, $170,000 per job to make pasta here. This does seem a bit wild. And I mean, this isn't so much public sector; it is publicly funded. But we've seen the public sector job market balloon, whereas obviously private has taken a huge hit in Canada over the last few years. So and I don't know why is the federal government funding this project. I haven't really looked into the story as much as I might like, but I don't understand why the federal government would have their toes in this at all, and why are
it's
taxpayers
just general
paying for
corporate
these
welfare.
jobs?
It's like they just want to run around handing out checks in an election year, or as an election years anyway.
Yeah, it seems like general vote buying. And, we are seeing this with the Liberals time and time again. They're spending millions, billions of dollars to create, for example, in Ontario, $1.5 billion for an EV battery plant that will create 1,000 jobs. I think there's been a couple of those announcements been reported. And you just look at this and you're like, why is this happening? This seems so ridiculous. But really, it's a sign of a broken economy when the government is coming in and they're spending millions and billions of taxpayers' dollars to create a handful of jobs. It doesn't really make sense. In a functioning economy, the natural supply and demand system would be creating jobs, well-paying jobs from private money. There would be no need for the federal government to get involved here. So this is really a broken system that we're seeing. It's just so frustrating, the amount of money we're spending on a handful of jobs. And also for the EV battery plant, I mean, that's its own loaded statements on its own. We're creating all these batteries. No one really wants electric vehicles. They haven't been successful. I don't think they are going to be very successful in the next few years. I think people have kind of seen what they have to offer and chosen other options. So it's extremely frustrating as a consumer and a taxpayer to watch this.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Just before we go, well, actually, I got one thing for us before we go. But before that thing happens, Rachel, you had this story which you wanted. It doesn't even really fit anywhere, but it was just weird.
Are we putting it up on? What story is this?
Peru.
Oh, yes. So Peru has officially classified trans people as mentally ill. I saw this and I, thought for a minute maybe that some mistake had been made, but someone had to say the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, I don't think Canada has sent enough money to Peru, which is why this has happened, because obviously the feds keep sending money to these foreign countries to bolster their LGBTQ community. So I think the Liberals haven't invested enough of our taxpayer
dollars. Don't give them any ideas,
Peru.
Isaac. Don't give them any ideas.
So Sean is our producer. He produces my show and this one. And I asked Sean, and he's Peruvian. So I asked him what he thought about it. And he said he forgot he was Peruvian. So, which was a convenient way to sidestep having an opinion on this.
Take some pride.
I
take some pride in your
nationality
now.
What was that, Rachel?
You can take some pride in it now.
Yeah, I always thought that a lot of those like Latin American, like the Central and South American countries were like really uber progressive, like but I guess not necessarily. So I don't know. Maybe they're turning a corner. I don't pretend to know anything about Peruvian politics. So Sean weighs in now. He's had some time to think about it. He says, as a Peruvian, I can say they are quite conservative when it comes to LGBTQ stuff. So okay, so maybe it's actually nothing new from them.
As our home Peruvian expert has spoken. I think also we're seeing...
Or, the future Peruvian ambassador to Canada, or Canadian ambassador to Peru. He forgets he's Peruvian, but as long as he doesn't forget he's Canadian, he's eligible for the gig.
I also think we're really seeing the pendulum like swinging back hard on a lot of these issues.
Yeah. No, agreed. All right. So earlier on, we were all struggling to come up with raps in real time. And as my True North colleagues know and are no doubt infuriated by, I have just developed this like weird affinity for AI generated music as of late. So while people were talking, I produced I didn't do it. I did like nothing. I typed in one sentence, an AI generated rap about defunding CBC. Now, I have not heard this yet. So this could be terrible, but we're going to put it up and we're going to listen to it. This is the world debut of a song that the AI app Suno has titled Defund the Broadcast.
Yo, it's time to address a topic that's been on my mind. CBC claim to represent the people, but you're far behind. Costing taxpayers money, it's getting out of control. Time to defund the broadcast, it's time for your reign to fall. CBC used to be the voice of the nation, but nowadays all I hear is propaganda and misrepresentation. You're out of touch with Canadians, you don't understand our plight. It's time to cut the funding, we need a change and we need it right. You claim to be unbiased, but it's clear that ain't the case. Reporting with agenda, pushing narratives in our face. You've forgotten your core mission, the reason you exist. It's time to defund the broadcast, it's time for you to resist.
I gotta say, that's better than the Dubai climate disinformation rap, I think.
That was quite good. I guess I'm actually the one who's behind the times, because while you were working away at your little song, I was kind of just looking up words on Rhyme Dictionary, trying to come up with some more rhymes. And in the whole time, I only got one, and I don't even remember it now.
I was Barton and Darton. That you had done Rosie Barton and Darton.
But I've been also working on rhymes throughout the show, and it's definitely wasn't as fast as your AI song.
Okay, so this is why we're all going to be out of work when the machines rise up and take their rightful place on the throne of civilization. All right, on that happy, delightful note, thanks to Rachel, Emmanuel, and Isaac Lamoureux for coming on the show. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Hope you have a fantastic long weekend. And remember, everything you've heard was please remember this, because I don't want this getting out. It was all off the record. Sean wants to know if the rap counts as Canadian content. I don't know. So I'm Canadian and I did the prompt, but the computer might not be Canadian. So I don't know if it's a Canadian artist.
We'll just, jiggle the words a little bit so the CRTC doesn't flag it.
Well, no, if it is Canadian, because when the online streaming act comes in, maybe this is like what we can just do to like force it to the front page.
See, I think that we, need to just do away with AI so we can all use our brains a little more, flex our skills. We're all becoming too lazy.
You came up with one rhyme in 45 minutes, Rachel.
But it was a good one. You want to hear it? Rosie Barton sued the Tories. That action is damnatory.
Mm. We need an AI model on the website that raps all of our articles out for the
I put
readers.
Andrew's AI song into my podcast.
I know. Did people like that? I forget.
It's very mixed. It's half and half. A lot of people like the song, and then a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't stand that it's AI," but otherwise they like the song. And then there's also a good number of people who are like, "It's super cringy, Rachel. Like, you need to take it off. I have to skip your intro now."
Oh well. All right.
It's my show. I make the decisions.